please welcome back to the stage, Catherine Houghton.
Hello, everyone. We're approaching the final stretch, but we've got some good things waiting for you before the end. I'm here to introduce our next speaker. His name is Travis McCready. He is the president and CEO of Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, and he's going to speak to us about precision medicine and prevention.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Travis McCready. I'm the president and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Amy, your host today, for inviting me to participate in the conference. And I blame Amy in advance if this talk it sucks. Look, Amy saw me speak once, okay? And I think I opened my remarks by making a correlation between shoe size and cloud storage. And it is a thing, for those of you who are curious. A word or two about the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center before we get into the good stuff. We are a quasi-governmental authority. We were created back in 2007, 2008, and given by the state legislature a mandate of advancing the life sciences ecosystem here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We were imbued with $1 billion over 10 years. And we were recently renewed in June of last year to the tune of about $625 million over 5 years. To be clear, this is your money. This is taxpayer dollars. And with that, we have the strategy of investing in infrastructure, so stuff, lab facilities, incubators. Those of you who have heard of Lab Central, we were the initial funder of Lab Central, a wet lab incubator, as well as 6 other wet lab incubators. Lab buildings, ultra high-end pieces of equipment, fMRIs, PCRs, cryo-EMs, and the like. We also try and attract companies to come here to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as investing in early-stage research. So we invest in young companies that are on the cutting edge, give them either capital, loan, or in some cases even equity to help accelerate them through the translational process. And then the last thing that we do, I'm very proud of, and don't get me started on this because we could talk about this all day, but is academic and workforce development. We understand that the incubation period for talent in the health industry and the life sciences industry requires a long period of investment in education. So we invest in capital equipment, professional development in middle schools, high schools, community colleges, vocational technical schools, and the like. Besides the Department of Education, we are the only agency, the only institution in the state that has invested in every single vocational technical school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have the largest internship program for the life sciences in the United States of America. We have interns in both colleges and high school. You can see I can go on and talk about this forever. But today what I wanted to talk to you about is my sleepless nights. My personal background, I am not from the life sciences. It's dangerous having a philosophy major, run a life sciences organization. Doing the best I can, work with me. I spent a lot of time at the Boston Foundation in philanthropy. And when I started to engage more deeply in this industry, I've started to have many more sleepless nights over a very simple paradox. And that is, over the past 2 centuries in particular, and it has been accelerating over the past 20 years, we have been engaging in the life sciences in what I describe as a very reductionist approach to understanding human health. We've mapped the human genome. We have tools such as CRISPR-Cas9, and we were talking about CRISPR-Cas9 a little bit earlier. We have the ability to write, and I mean that in the Microsoft Word sort of a sense. We have the ability to write proteins and create proteins, amino acids and the like, monoclonal antibodies. We can go on and on. A lot of this is powered of course, by the enabling technologies such as AI, machine learning, and the like. This past year, we as a state have invested close to $3.6 billion in venture capital towards life sciences companies. And a lot of this investment is going towards rare diseases, so-called orphan diseases, diseases that afflict 100,000 patients or less. And I'm sure you read the news about the cost for those treatments. And I take absolutely nothing scientifically or practically away from those treatments. For the very first time, this industry is knocking on the door of being able to use the C word. We're on the verge of being able to talk about cures. We don't know longitudinally whether that in fact will be the case, but we're faced with really extraordinary challenges right now in this industry to be able to talk about cures for these orphan diseases and charge, in some cases, 6 and 7 figures. But I have a challenge with this reductionist approach. So while we certainly understand our microbiome better, we certainly understand metabolomics better, and honestly, at the Life Sciences Center, we are partly responsible for this reductionist approach. We just invested $10 million, for example, in what we called a Bits to Bytes program, public-private partnerships between private sector and nonprofit research institutions. And through these partnerships, we'll be dealing with potential cures and breakthroughs in metabolomics, genomics, proteomics, and the like. We're getting better and better at understanding the mechanisms of action of disease. That is great. But part of my personal history is, as I mentioned, spending time at the Boston Foundation. And at the Boston Foundation, for those of you who don't know, it's one of the largest community foundations in the United States of America, with an endowment north of $1 billion. We spent all of our time thinking about health in a different way. We spent time thinking about health the way our grandmothers thought about health. We talked about access to food and healthy food. We invested in nonprofit organizations like Playworks that was attempting to get physical education back into our classrooms, because we know that physical education is a pathway to greater health. We invested in what were called the social determinants of health, a term that is a little bit of a mouthful, but basically it just means that your environment matters, what you eat matters, the people you surround yourself with matter, poverty matters, having a job matters. All of these things, having a job, being in a positive environment, are positively correlated with health. For those of you who have not read Raj Chetty's work, Raj Chetty, Harvard professor, coined a phrase that still deeply resonates with me. In some cases, your zip code is a better determinant of health than your genetic code, right? Your zip code is more determinant of health than your genetic code. So I have sleepless nights. On the one hand, I'm at an organization which really is doing incredible work in advancing our understanding of mechanisms of action and human health at a genetic, molecular, proteomic level. But on the other hand, I'm challenged by the notion that public health is something that we all have access to, and we should all have access to, regardless of whether or not we have the capabilities and the capacities to pay for the 6-figure or 7-figure so-called cure. So what does this mean? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for us in terms of what you all and what we all should be thinking about in terms of how we manage this goal of precision medicine or precision health going forward. And I thought I would share with you 3 reflections, depending on how these 3 reflections come out, I'm going to preface it by saying these are not necessarily the viewpoints of my organization or the viewpoints of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but are things that I think about when I lay awake trying to decide, make decisions about how we should be investing your money, the taxpayer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first thing is I'm a firm believer that yes, you are what you eat. Yeah? This is what our parents have told us. This is what we have thousands of years of clinical trials, undocumented clinical trials, and those undocumented clinical trials are called human history. We have thousands of years worth of data that prove that you are, in fact, what you eat. The interesting thing about investing in microbiome research is that once you engage in this reductionist approach of understanding the over 1 trillion microbiota in your gut, on your skin, and in other unseemly places, once you understand the research about the microbiome, you actually get to this point where this reductionist approach reveals that, yes, health is actually modulated by your diet. And there's some really interesting potential implications of that research. What you eat could also modulate neurodegenerative diseases. Yeah? What you eat could potentially stave off Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the like. We're starting to get the inkling and this viewpoint into the microbiome that would suggest that your diet is not just fuel, as some folks on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, Soylent, I think, is the name of the company. A really unfortunate name as far as I'm concerned. For those of you who have seen the movie, it's people. But yeah, your diet is more than just fuel. It can help modulate positive outcomes in your disease, in certain disease states. So one of the conclusions that we have, and that I would certainly suggest and implore with you, is that we continue to explore the implications of access to healthy food, right? This means not only just from our standpoint in terms of research into the microbiome, but also be on the lookout for and also invest in those not-for-profit organizations that are remediating food deserts and food swamps. Also be on the lookout for those organizations that are understanding soil health, because soil health is actually a part of food health. Also be on the lookout for organizations that are remediating the economic challenges of having access to healthy food. All of this is part of this endeavor of being able to work in the microbiome to be able to drive positive human health. The second conclusion that I've come to is not a whiz-bang moment and not a surprise either, but it's that your environment matters. And what we're doing to our environment matters. You go down to Kendall Square, and this is just a fact, the single densest life sciences ecosystem in the world. There are more companies, life science companies, per square mile in Kendall Square than anywhere else in the world. And somewhere in the order of magnitude, 60 to 65% of those companies are focusing on some really rare approach to curing cancer. It's an amazing candy store of cancer researchers. There are actually some people here that I saw a little earlier and here in the audience that I saw that are a part of this community of people that are trying to cure cancer. There's also this tiny little organization in Newton called the Silver Spring Institute. And they play an important role, not necessarily in curing cancer, but in understanding what the environmental causes of cancer actually are. And I just love this juxtaposition where you have more companies focused on curing cancer anywhere else in the world, crammed into 1 square mile in Kendall Square. And then you've got this tiny little company in Newton. And I don't mean this with any disrespect to Newton, but you've got this tiny little company in Newton that's carrying more water than Gunga Din to understand the environmental causes of cancer. When I think about that, the juxtaposition of that $3.7 billion annually that's going into the curing of cancer, and this small little organization in Newton that's struggling every year to make its budget, trying to figure out the environmental causes, what plastic in our environment means, what kind of the carcinogens that are in plastic. We're just a little bit out of balance. So I would recommend to you, and I certainly take to heart, those organizations that are in the business of working in the environment, not because I'm asking you all to be environmental social justice warriors, although that's not a bad ask to have. I'm asking you to look out for those companies because spending and investing $3.7 billion a year in curing cancer, this is no bottomless trough of money in this area. We have to invest on both sides of the equation. What's actually causing it, not just at the genetic level, but in the environmental level, what's actually causing cancer, and some of these other environmental diseases, as well as how do you cure them. And then the last conclusion I've come to, and this is real heresy for a guy who's running an organization investing in drugs, therapies, and devices, but I can't help but come to the conclusion that drugs and devices, we should treat them as last resort, not first resort, right? I was walking I was in Dubai a couple of years ago at the largest life sciences convention in the world. It was just a zoo, somewhere in the order of magnitude, 140,000 people crammed into the Dubai Convention Center. And there's a section for pharmaceuticals, there's a section for devices, and then there's this massive section for a segment of the market that we don't particularly focus on too terribly much, called nutraceuticals. And this whole area of nutraceuticals is trying to bring to the life sciences ecosystem the phrase that dominated the tech world in the early noughties. There's an app for that, right? Nutraceuticals, they're trying to create a world where there's a pill for that, right? And so I was walking with a colleague, and this is her third time going to this conference, and she was so excited to go to the nutraceutical section because she doesn't want to work out, right? She doesn't want to exercise, right? She wants to go over to the nutraceutical section so she can get the pill that will allow her not to work out, right? And that was an incredibly disappointing experience to have, thinking that we're going to allow science to be the first line of defense for creating our individual health. There's something very dispiriting to me about that. So yes, invest in when you have these genetic rare diseases, when we need to have cures to be able to remediate them. But we also need to invest in prevention. We also need to put science, in my opinion, in its proper place and take further responsibility for driving our own personalized health. So those are my reflections, and yeah, those are not the opinion of an organization necessarily that's in the business of investing your money in new cures, devices, and the like. But it is the opinion of someone who has had exposure to some of the most incredible science and devices in the world being developed right here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but knowing that our health data is not moving in a linear fashion with the amount of investment in the life sciences industry. There are ways in which we can take care of our own precision health, our own personal health, that do not require $3.6 billion worth of venture capital investment every single year. So with that, thank you again for allowing me to be here and address you this afternoon. And for those of you who do have large feet, go get a bigger server.